Stephen, as you have looked over your life and you've been through this journey, I know you've mentioned Brian Tracy quite a bit, and I know Brian Walsh has had such an impact on you. But are there any lessons that really, like, as you move through life, you realize that these are the predominant lessons that have stood out from different teachers for you?
I think, yeah, I mean, it's so interesting, Candice, because there's so many different, I mean, obviously in this space, we work with so many different brilliant teachers. And sometimes because we work with so many of, like, I kind of forget sometimes who said what. But it's an interesting space to be in. And there's so many like standout moments. I think there's, a couple of key things for me is, like I mentioned earlier, like that action brings clarity. Um, you've got to if you don't know what to do, you've got to take that first step and start moving. But one of the really big standouts for me as well has been Dr. John DeMartini and values. I think that's been like a huge thing for me, and I'm actually like starting to apply some of it again now. Like I think we get a little bit off track, and we've got to sort of come back to these things. So for me, I remember doing my values. Yeah, many years ago when I first started, like I mentioned, I started the lead coaching with Brian back in the day, a couple of years back. And the first exercise he took us through was values. And out of that exercise, they've changed a little bit now, but it was business success came out top. That was like running and owning and building a successful business and helping others to do the same. Um, Travel was a big one for me, and cars. And I think somewhere in the top few was coffee and a couple other things. It was quite an interesting mix, It was like really interesting. Um, and so it's really interesting to get clarity on that. And I think that's probably been one of the biggest standout things is, and it's okay. Like for me, a strange one for me at the time was that family wasn't on that list, and it was like, whoa, like why? Like, am I doing something wrong? Like, and it's not necessarily the case. I think it comes from understanding where there's a lack. So for me, there was a lack of or a void maybe in terms of my own personal development, wanting to be successful in some way and finding that through business. And for things like I said, cars was on there. I just love cars, just like cool, so it's okay. So I think it needs to be, and it's different for everyone. Everyone's got different values. Everyone's got different priorities of them. Some of them are, for me, there was quite a big standout one around business, and cars and travel was quite a far second. But I've definitely noticed that that's where, like my happy space almost is definitely with cars. Which has been an interesting one because while I was traveling, like we lived in France for 3.5 years, and so we sold everything before we left, and I didn't own a car for 3.5 years, and I'd owned like quite a bunch of cars before that, and so it was a bit of a strange one, and it didn't really matter because I think at the time I was fulfilling those values through travel and working really hard at the business, and then come back now, like I'm not traveling much at the moment. I've spent a bit of time in Cape Town, but I'm mostly up in Johannesburg at the moment, and so I think cars has really crept back up that list. And so last week I went and did some racing with with a driving academy, and I think it was fantastic. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it just reminded me like that's one of my values. And if you can do stuff that serves your values, if you can do stuff that have a bit of fun, um, I think that's important. And so that's probably one of the biggest standout lessons I've learned through this whole personal development. But along the way, I think another critical area of that is just being self-aware, to know, what makes you happy, what doesn't, what works well for you. Like I mentioned, morning routines, like being aware of what works for you and what doesn't, and being aware of where you're lacking in skills or you need to find help or whatever. Like I think that combined with values is probably the two biggest takeaways for me so far, if I look back on things.
No, I love that. And I think the most interesting thing about values is, and I think a lot of people fall into that. I fell into the trap of thinking that, but I know what my values are. So before I did the values facts, I was like, but I know what I value. I don't need to do this exercise. I almost actually said to Lisa, I was like, no, don't worry. I know. I mean, imagine my arrogance. Where I'm like, I know what they are. Like, I don't need to sit down for an hour and do this. And so I did it. And, my values, I was like, I mean, the top one made a lot of sense, which was large impact. Like, I need to be in front of people. I need to do. So that made a lot of sense. I was like, yeah, I could have told you that. But then the second and third, I was like, no, I would have never said. So I love that. I love like taking what you think, which is the personal development field, right? A lot of people can think they know the knowledge, but until you implement it, it's just useless.
Yeah.
Stephen, you mentioned a few things as you were sharing, and the one thing that stuck out to me, as you know, when you said you went racing, is how have you integrated like a balance in your life? Because building a multi-million-dollar company is a lot of work and it consumes a lot of time. And as you mentioned earlier in the interview, you are someone who likes getting things done, you know? So how have you managed to actually integrate some sort of balance into your life?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that I haven't. No, no, I'm working on it, right? So I have definitely been far more. A lot of people might use workaholic as a term. I love my work, so for me, it's never been an issue, right? For as long as I can remember, I've worked really long hours. I've worked hard. I'm not scared of that at all. I enjoy it. Like I enjoy the work I do like 99% of the time, right? There's I think so for me it's not really been an issue to have that balance per se. Like but there's been a couple of key things that I've learned, and certainly over the last probably the last 6 months, even more so, is that in order for me to do that, I've got an incredibly supportive wife, and she basically helps me do a lot of that. So she takes care of a lot of other stuff, so I can work and do that. And I think we've got a good separation there in terms of where the different roles we play. And I think that I wouldn't be able to do that without her and supporting me in that way. And I think so for me that, like I said, the work doesn't scare me, and I can do spend a lot of hours there. That being said, um, it working with another brilliant coach over the last few months has been one of the things that it's been made quite clear is that I need to go out and have some fun. I can't just work all the time, right? And and it's interesting because like I never really thought of it that way. Like I would do some stuff from time to time. I would have fun, but maybe not as much, and maybe probably put work first. And so it's definitely a case of, I think I'm really grateful for being in this space where I've been able to take a bit more time out and being able to build the team and build the organization so that it's not reliant on me for sure. Like we've got a whole team that can run stuff. Um, and so for me, it feels like it's taken a while to get to that space. If I consider coming from my previous company where I did a lot of the stuff myself, and and this is very applicable to I think a lot of entrepreneurs starting out, is that we tend to almost create a job for ourselves, right, instead of building a business. And so to be able to make that switch and start building a business and delegating stuff and being able to get, whether that's just a virtual assistant for an hour a day, whatever it might be, you got to start offloading stuff and build a business and a system that can do things for you instead of you being the business. And a lot of people get stuck in that process where I think the term is like you're the technician, you're doing the work. And so for me, I've been very grateful that I can sort of start stepping away from that and rather leading the business, leading the operations, and leading the what needs to be done rather than doing it all myself. And so that's been a critical part of that. But it's definitely like I feel there's, like I said, that balance always hasn't always been there because I enjoy my work. But stepping away, having some fun, doing some other stuff allows you to come back in a way that's more recharged. So I can come back to where I can go racing for a day and come back with having spent some time away from work, thoughts are clearer, vision is clearer, like what needs to get done, and just sort of reevaluate what your priorities are. And I think that's really important. And I think anyone in the leadership space needs to be able to do this, is to be able to take time out and switch off so that you don't get stuck in the doing, and so that you can help your team, you can help your business and put in the systems and structures to help grow things rather than just getting stuck in the busy work. And yeah, so that's been made abundantly clear to me over the last few months, and I'm like physically trying to make that happen now. So, and it helps. It definitely helps.